The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the dark between stars. Its metal walls stretched for miles in every direction. Thousands of ships from different worlds docked at its many ports. Inside the station, beings from across the galaxy walked through wide hallways. Some had scales, others had fur, and many looked completely different from anything found on most planets. Today was different. Today fear filled the air like poison. In the great meeting hall, representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in rows of seats that rose up toward the ceiling. The hall was so big that voices needed special speakers to carry across the room. At the center, a blue hologram showed a small planet far away. The planet looked peaceful, with white clouds swirling around green and brown land masses. This planet was Kepler 442b, home to more than 2 million people, and in 18 days it would be destroyed. Ambassador Tejo stood at the speaking platform. He was tall and thin, with smooth gray skin that reflected the lights above. His people, the Altarians, had been part of the Galactic Council for 300 years. They had seen many wars, many tragedies, but the look in Tejo's large black eyes showed this was worse than most. Council members, Tejo began, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. We face a terrible truth today. The colony on Kepler 442b has been sending distress signals for 3 full cycles. They are asking for help. They are begging for someone to save them. The hologram changed. Now it showed dark shapes moving through space. These were ships, but not like the peaceful vessels docked outside Nexus Prime. These ships looked like weapons themselves. Sharp edges and black metal that seemed to drink in light. Gun ports covered their surfaces like angry eyes. The Vorthon Empire approaches, Tejo continued. Their war fleet will reach Kepler 442b in 18 rotations. We all know what happens to worlds the Vorthons take. The people are made into slaves. The resources are stripped away. The planet dies, a female voice shouted from the crowd. Then we must stop them. The voice belonged to Nari, delegate from the Centauri system. She stood up in her seat, her crystal-like body catching the light and throwing rainbows across the nearby walls. Her people were known for their fierce hearts and their loyalty to peaceful worlds. Sit down, Nari, called another voice. This came from Gektor, a large being covered in thick brown fur. His people had fought the Vorthons before and lost badly. You know we cannot reach them in time. Tejo nodded sadly. Gektor speaks the truth. Our fastest fleet is 47 rotations away from Kepler 442b. Even if we left this moment, we would arrive to find only ash and empty space. The hall erupted in angry voices. Some delegates shouted about duty and honor. Others talked about the practical problems of sending ships so far. A few mentioned the cost of fighting the Vorthons, who had never lost a major battle. What about the mercenary groups? Asked Velix, a thin creature with 6 arms. Surely some of them would help for the right price. The mercenaries lack the ships needed, Tejo replied. The Vorthon fleet has over 300 warships. The largest mercenary group has maybe 30 vessels. They would be destroyed before they could fire a single shot. The delegates fell silent. Everyone knew Tejo was right. The Vorthons did not just win battles through numbers. Their technology was better than most council races. Their weapons could cut through the strongest shields. Their armor could survive attacks that would destroy normal ships. There must be someone, Nari said, but her voice was quieter now. Some group we have not contacted. Some alliance we do not know about. An old delegate named Morven laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Who, the ghost stories? The legends? Should we pray to the old gods to save us? What about the humans? Asked a small voice from the back. The hall went completely quiet. Even the air recycling system seemed to stop making noise. Tejo looked toward the back rows. Who said that? A young aide stood up slowly. His name was Kip Ran, and he worked for one of the minor delegates. His green skin showed he was nervous, but he continued speaking. The humans, he said again. I have heard stories. Ships near the Sol system. Strange signals. Maybe they could help. Several delegates began laughing. The laughter was not mean, but it was tired. Like adults listening to a child talk about imaginary friends. Kip Ran, Tejo said gently. The human stories are just that. Stories. No one has ever made contact with them. Most experts think they do not exist at all. They are myths. But what if they are real? Kip Ran asked. What if they are just hiding? What if they have been waiting for the right moment? Then they have waited too long, said Gektor. If they exist and they have ships, why have they never helped before? Why have they stayed silent while worlds burned? The young aide sat down, his face showing his embarrassment. Around the hall, delegates shook their heads or made dismissive gestures with their hands, claws, or tentacles. But not everyone dismissed the idea completely. In the intelligence section of the station, analyst Dong Min was reading old reports on his computer screen. He had been studying strange energy readings for months, readings that came from the direction of Earth's solar system. The reports were confusing. They showed construction on a massive scale, ships being built in numbers that seemed impossible, technology that did not match anything in the Council databases. But every time investigation teams were sent toward the Sol system, they found nothing. Empty space, silent planets, no signs of advanced civilization. Dongmin had a theory. What if the humans were not hiding because they were weak? What if they were hiding because they were strong? What if they were so advanced that they could make themselves invisible to normal sensors? He looked at his screen again. The energy readings were getting stronger. Whatever was happening near Earth, it was building toward something big. Back in the main hall, the debate was ending. No fleet could reach Kepler 442b in time. No mercenary group was strong enough. The humans, if they existed at all, had never responded to any signals sent their way. Tejo raised his hand for silence. Council members, we must face reality. In 18 rotations, 2 million innocent people will die. We cannot save them. All we can do is remember them and promise that their sacrifice will not be forgotten. The delegates began filing out of the hall. Some went to their quarters to prepare reports for their home worlds. Others headed to the communication centers to send final messages to the doomed colony. Nari stayed in her seat longer than most. She stared at the hologram of Kepler 442b, watching the clouds swirl around the planet that would soon be a grave. Someone should come, she whispered to herself. Someone always comes. But as the hours passed and the Vorthan fleet grew closer to their target, it seemed like no one would come at all. The galaxy prepared to lose another world to the darkness. Far away in the Sol system that most believed was empty, something stirred. Deep in hidden shipyards, massive engines began to warm up. Weapons that had been charging for decades reached full power. And in command centers buried inside artificial asteroids, human officers looked at star charts and began planning routes to distant worlds. The galaxy thought no person would appear to help the dying colony. The galaxy was about to learn how wrong it could be. Deep beneath Nexus Prime in the archives that most people never saw, analyst Dong Min sat surrounded by glowing screens. The archives stretched for miles underground. Millions of files from thousands of worlds filled the computer systems. Most of it was boring reports about trade routes and population counts. But some files held mysteries that had puzzled experts for decades. Dongmin was not supposed to be looking at these files. His job was to study current threats to the Council. But the meeting about Kepler 442b had bothered him. The idea that no one could help those people felt wrong, so he decided to dig deeper into the old stories about humans. What he found made his blood run cold. The first file was from a mining operation on Rigel 7. The miners had been digging for rare metals when they found something unexpected. Deep underground, they discovered a chamber made of materials that did not exist anywhere in the galaxy. The walls were covered with symbols that no translator could understand. But the most interesting part was the energy signature. The chamber was still powered after who knows how many thousands of years. The power source was unlike anything Council scientists had ever seen. Dongmin opened another file. This one came from a research station near the Vega system. Scientists there had found similar ruins on 3 different planets. The same strange materials, the same unknown symbols, the same impossible power sources. He kept reading. File after file showed the same pattern. Ancient structures scattered across dozens of systems. All of them built with technology that was far beyond what any known race could create. All of them left behind by someone who had vanished long before the current galactic civilizations began. The reports called them precursor sites. The scientists who studied them believed they were built by some ancient race that had died out millions of years ago. But Dongmin was starting to see a different pattern. He pulled up a star map and marked every location where the ruins had been found. The dots formed a rough circle around a section of space that included hundreds of star systems. At the center of that circle was one particular system that everyone thought was empty. The Sol system, Earth system. Dongmin stared at the map for a long time. Then he opened a new search window and typed in Sol system energy readings. What came up made him forget to breathe. 3 levels above Dongmin, in the xenobiology research section, Sujin was having her own moment of discovery. She had been studying the symbols found at the precursor sites for years. Like everyone else, she had assumed they were from some dead civilization. But today, while reviewing the latest findings from a dig on Altair 3, she noticed something new. The symbols were not random. They followed mathematical patterns that suggested they were not just decoration. They were instructions, or maybe warnings. She ran the patterns through every translation program the council had. Nothing worked. But then she remembered something she had seen in an old file about primitive Earth cultures. Humans, according to the few reports that existed, used similar mathematical concepts in their early space exploration. Things like prime numbers and geometric sequences, the kind of universal mathematical language that any intelligent species would understand. Sujin felt her heart's racing. She pulled up the symbols from Altair 3 and ran them through a program designed to recognize human mathematical concepts. The computer beeped. Translation found the message was simple. Monitoring Station 7. Status active. Next check. Cycle 847. Cycle 847 had ended 2 years ago. Sujin's hands shook as she opened communication files from that time period. 2 years ago, several deep space monitoring stations had detected unusual subspace disturbances near the outer rim. The disturbances had lasted for exactly 72 hours, then stopped. Someone had been checking their monitoring stations. Someone who used human mathematics. While Sujin was making her discovery, Captain Jinwoo was floating in the command center of his survey ship, Stellar Dawn. His job was to map unexplored regions of space and look for new planets that could support life. It was usually boring work, but today was different. His ship was positioned near the edge of Council space, close to the systems that everyone called empty. His sensors were picking up readings that made no sense. "Chief," he called to his second-in-command, a small blue creature named Pixit. "Are you seeing this?" Pixit floated over to look at Jinwoo's screen. Her large eyes grew even larger. "Those are construction signatures, Captain. Massive construction. But the computer says there is nothing there." Jinwoo adjusted the sensors to maximum range. The readings became clearer, but also more confusing. His equipment was detecting the energy signatures of shipyards. Not just 1 or 2 small facilities, but hundreds of them. Industrial construction on a scale that dwarfed anything in Council space. But when he looked through the main view screen, all he could see were empty stars and floating rocks. "It has to be sensor malfunction," Pixit said. "Nothing could hide construction that big." "Run full diagnostics," Jinwoo ordered. "Check every system twice." The diagnostics came back clean. The sensors were working perfectly. Whatever was out there was real. It was just invisible to normal observation. Jinwoo had heard stories about advanced stealth technology. Some races could hide single ships for short periods, but hiding entire industrial complexes for years or decades? That was beyond anything in Council records. He opened a secure channel to his superiors. "Command, this is Stellar Dawn. I need to report unusual findings in Sector 7 Alpha." The reply came back an hour later. "Stellar Dawn, Command. Your report is logged. Continue standard survey operations. Do not investigate further without direct authorization." Jinwoo stared at the message. In 20 years of survey work, Command had never told him to ignore something this big. Someone higher up already knew about whatever was hiding out there. Back on Nexus Prime, the 3 investigators were about to learn they were not alone in their discoveries. Dongmin received a message on his private communications channel. It was from Sujin, asking to meet in the deep archives. An hour later, Sujin received a similar message from Jinwoo. They met in a storage room filled with old data crystals. The room was so far from the main levels that their conversation would not be monitored. "I think the humans are real," Dongmin said without introduction, "and I think they have been watching us for a very long time." Sujin nodded. "The precursor sites are not ancient ruins. They are monitoring stations. Human monitoring stations. And according to my translations, they are still active." Jinwoo looked at both of them. "Active is right. I just spent 3 days watching invisible shipyards build invisible ships. The construction signatures are enormous. Whatever they are building out there could change the balance of power in the entire galaxy." The three of them shared their data. The picture that emerged was shocking. Humans were not myths. They were not primitive beings struggling to survive on one small planet. They were an advanced civilization that had been secretly observing the galaxy for thousands of years. But why hide? Su Jin asked. If they have this kind of technology, why not join the council? Why not help with problems like the Vorthons? Maybe they are waiting for something, Dongmin suggested. Maybe they are preparing for something bigger than the Vorthons. Jinwoo pulled up his sensor readings. Look at these energy signatures. This is not just shipbuilding. This is preparation for war. But war against what? None of them had an answer. But as they studied the data, one thing became clear. The humans were not just watching anymore. They were getting ready to act. We need to tell someone, Su Jin said. Tell them what? Dongmin asked. That the myths are real? That there is a secret civilization hiding in plain sight? Who would believe us? The people on Kepler 442b might believe us, Jinwoo said quietly. If there is any chance the humans might help them. The three investigators looked at each other. They were holding information that could change everything. But they were also holding information that could get them labeled as crazy. Outside their meeting room, the countdown to Kepler 442b's destruction continued. 14 days remained. The Vorthon fleet was moving faster than expected, and in the hidden shipyards near Earth, construction teams were working around the clock. Ships that had been building for decades were finally nearing completion. Weapons systems that used principles unknown to the rest of the galaxy were being loaded and tested. Admiral Jae-hyun stood on the bridge of the massive ship Terra Prime, looking at star charts that showed the route to Kepler 442b. His weathered face showed the weight of decisions that would soon reshape the galaxy. Communications. Open a channel to Fleet Command, he ordered. Channel open, Admiral. This is Jae-hyun. Tell Command that the time for hiding is over. Tell them that Kepler 442b will not fall. Tell them to prepare the Grand Armada for full reveal. The communications officer, a young woman named Yoonji, looked shocked. Sir, are you certain? Once we reveal ourselves, there will be no going back. Jae-hyun nodded grimly. There was never going to be any going back. The galaxy is about to face threats that make the Vorthons look like children playing with toys. Better they learn about us now when we are coming to help, than later when we might be their only hope for survival. As Terra Prime began final preparations for departure, the three investigators on Nexus Prime were making a decision of their own. The orbital platform Haven's shield hung in space above Kepler 442b like a metal moon. Its weapons pointed outward toward the dark between stars, waiting for death to arrive. Admiral Kyung-soo stood on the command bridge, watching his sensor screens with growing dread. 40 ships. That was all he had to defend 2 million lives. 40 aging vessels with outdated weapons and patched armor. They were good ships with brave crews, but they were not enough. Not nearly enough. Admiral, called Lieutenant Bo-ra from the sensor station. Long-range scanners are picking up the Vorthon fleet. 300 ships approaching from multiple vectors. Kyung-soo nodded grimly. The reports had been accurate. The Vorthons were coming with overwhelming force. His small defense fleet would last maybe an hour against those numbers. Signal all ships, he ordered. Battle formation Delta. We make them pay for every meter of space. On the planet below, people were trying to live normal lives even though they knew death was coming. Children went to school. Adults went to work. But everyone looked up at the sky more often than usual, hoping to see rescue ships that would never come. The Vorthon fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Their ships were nightmares made of black metal and sharp edges. Gunports covered their hulls like hungry mouths. At the center of the formation was the flagship Dominator, a massive dreadnought that was larger than Haven's shield. Admiral Zex Moore of the Vorthon Empire stood on his command bridge, looking at the tactical display with amusement. 40 small ships against his mighty fleet. It would barely count as target practice. Communications, Zexmore growled, his voice like grinding stone. Send the standard surrender demand. Give them one chance to submit before we destroy them all. The message went out across all frequencies. Defenders of Kepler 442b, you are outmatched and outgunned. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Resist and we will make your world burn slowly. On Haven's shield, Kyung-soo listened to the message with a cold smile. Communications, open a channel to the Vorthon fleet. Channel open, Admiral. This is Admiral Kyung-soo of the Kepler Defense Force. We reject your demands. These people are under our protection. If you want them, you will have to go through us first. Zexmore's laughter echoed across the communication channel. So be it, Admiral. Your courage will be remembered for the few minutes you have left to live. The Vorthon fleet began moving forward in perfect formation. Their weapons started charging with deadly energy. On Haven's shield, alarms began sounding as the crew prepared for their final battle. But then something impossible happened. Space itself seemed to tear open near the edge of the system. Not the familiar blue glow of hyperspace jumps or the swirling vortex of wormhole travel. This was different. Reality bent and twisted, creating openings that hurt to look at directly. The first portal was enormous, easily 10 kilometers across. Then another appeared, and another. Within minutes, dozens of these impossible rifts had opened throughout the system. "What in the void is that?" whispered Lieutenant Bora, staring at her screens in shock. Kyung-soo had seen many strange things in his years as a fleet officer, but this was beyond anything in his experience. "Analysis," he barked. "What are those things?" "Unknown, Admiral. The energy readings are off the scale. Whatever technology is creating those portals, it is far beyond anything in Council records." On the Vorthon flagship, similar confusion was spreading. Zexmore's tactical officers were scrambling to make sense of sensor readings that made no sense. "Admiral," called his science officer, "the portals are stabilizing. Something is coming through." The first ship to emerge from the portals was beyond description. It was roughly the size of a Vorthon heavy cruiser, but its hull seemed to flow like liquid metal. Patterns of light moved across its surface in ways that suggested the ship was not entirely solid. It moved through space with impossible grace, as if the normal rules of physics were merely suggestions. Then came another ship, and another. Within moments, dozens of vessels were emerging from the portals. Each one was different from the others, but all shared the same impossible beauty and obvious power. But it was the final ship that made both fleets fall silent with awe and terror. The Terra Prime came, through the largest portal, like a mountain learning to fly. It was not just a ship, but a mobile city, stretching for dozens of kilometers in every direction. Its hull was covered with weapon arrays that hummed with barely contained energy. Docking bays big enough to hold entire fleets dotted its sides. On Haven's shield, every crew member stopped what they were doing to stare at the tactical display. The Terra Prime was showing power readings that should have been impossible for any single vessel. "By all the stars," Kyung-soo whispered. "What are these ships?" His question was answered when communications crackled to life. The voice that spoke was calm, professional, and completely human. "This is Admiral Jae-hyun of the United Earth Colonial Defense Force. Vorthon Fleet, you are in violation of galactic law by threatening a peaceful colony. You have 10 minutes to withdraw from this system or face the consequences." The silence that followed was complete. Even the background hum of ship systems seemed to fade away. On the Vorthon flagship, Zexmore stared at his tactical screens in disbelief. The human ships were showing energy signatures that dwarfed his entire fleet combined. But surely it was some kind of trick. Some desperate bluff by a primitive species, Admiral. His tactical officer reported, voice shaking. "I am reading weapon systems on the human ships that I cannot identify. The power outputs are beyond our measurement capabilities," Zexmore snarled. "Impossible. No species has technology that advanced. They are trying to frighten us with sensor ghosts and holograms." He opened a channel to the human fleet. "Unknown vessels, I am Admiral Zexmore of the Vorthon Empire. You are interfering with legitimate military operations. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." The response came from Admiral Jae-hyun with the patience of someone explaining something to a child. "Admiral Zexmore, this is your final warning. You have violated the territory of a peaceful world. You have threatened innocent civilians. You have exactly 10 minutes to begin withdrawal or we will remove you by force." Zexmore's rage boiled over. In his entire career, no one had dared speak to him with such disrespect. The Vorthon Empire was feared across the galaxy. These humans, whoever they were, would learn that fear or die. "All ships, open fire," he roared. "Destroy these arrogant fools." 300 Vorthon warships turned their weapons toward the human fleet and unleashed everything they had. The space between the fleets lit up with plasma bolts, energy beams, and missile trails. It was enough firepower to crack a planet. The attacks reached the human ships and simply vanished. Energy shields flickered around the human vessels, but they were not like any defensive technology anyone had ever seen. The shields seemed to absorb the Vorthan attacks and convert them into something else. Some shots were redirected back at the attackers. Others were transformed into harmless light displays. The Terra Prime had not even bothered to raise its shields. The massive ship simply absorbed every attack that hit it without any visible effect. Admiral Jae Hyun's voice came over the communications again, and this time there was no patience left in it. You have made your choice, Admiral Zexmore. All human ships, you are cleared to engage. Show them why we stayed hidden for so long. What happened next was not a battle. It was a demonstration of power that would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. The human ships moved like dancers, flowing through space in formations that should have been impossible. They fired weapons that bent space itself, creating gravity wells that tore Vorthan ships apart from the inside. Energy beams that phased in and out of normal reality struck targets that thought they were safely hidden behind asteroids. Strike fighters emerged from the larger human ships, small craft that flickered in and out of existence like deadly ghosts. Their pilot, Min Ho, led squadrons of fighters that appeared inside Vorthan formations, struck with devastating precision, and vanished before return fire could reach them. Ghost Squadron to Terra Prime, Minho reported over the communication channel. Enemy fighter screens eliminated. Moving to support capital ship engagement. On Haven's shield, Admiral Kyung-soo and his crew watched in stunned silence as the most feared fleet in the galaxy was systematically destroyed by forces they could barely comprehend. Admiral, Lieutenant Bo-ra whispered. Who are these people? Kyung-soo could only shake his head. I do not know, but I am very glad they are on our side. The Vorthan flagship Dominator, seeing its fleet being destroyed around it, made a desperate decision. Zexmore ordered his ship to ram the Terra Prime at full speed. If he was going to die, he would take these impossible humans with him. The massive Vorthan dreadnought accelerated toward the human flagship, its engines screaming as they pushed beyond safe limits. Zexmore stood on his bridge, waiting for the moment of impact that would end everything. The Terra Prime did not move to avoid the attack. It simply waited, its weapons tracking the approaching ship with casual precision. At the last moment, when collision seemed certain, the Terra Prime fired a single shot. The weapon was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. It was not energy or matter, but something that changed the very structure of space around the target. The news traveled across the galaxy faster than the fastest ships. On every world, in every space station, on every mining platform, people gathered around communication screens to watch the impossible recordings from Kepler 442b. The humans were real, and they were more powerful than anyone had dared to imagine. On the trade world of Nexus 7, Merchant Captain Hwan-Su watched the battle footage for the 10th time. Each viewing made it seem more unreal. Ships that moved like liquid, weapons that dissolved matter at the atomic level, technology that made the most advanced council science look primitive. How long have they been hiding? He asked his crew. No one had an answer. 3 days after the battle, every intelligence agency in the galaxy was working around the clock. The human fleet had not left the Kepler system. Instead, they had begun rescue operations, searching for survivors from the Vorthan ships and providing medical aid to anyone who needed it. This behavior puzzled military experts across the galaxy. Winners of battles did not usually help their defeated enemies. Conquerors did not provide medical care to those they had just fought, but the humans were doing exactly that. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council met an emergency session once again. This time, the Great Hall was packed beyond capacity. Every species wanted to understand what the appearance of humanity meant for the galaxy. Ambassador Tae-ho stood at the speaking platform, but his usual calm was gone. Council members, we face a new reality today. The humans exist. They have technology far beyond our understanding, and they have just demonstrated the ability to defeat the most feared military force in known space. Delegate Nari raised her crystalline hand. What do they want? Have they made any demands? That is the most puzzling part, Tae-ho replied. They have made no demands at all. Admiral Jae-hyun responded to our first contact request with a simple message. He said they wanted to help. A wave of confused voices filled the hall. Species across the galaxy had learned to expect conquest, slavery, or tribute when faced with superior force. The idea that someone might just want to help was foreign to most galactic politics. It could be a trick, suggested Gektor, the furry delegate whose people had suffered under Vorthon rule. Maybe they are waiting to see how we react before they show their true intentions. Before anyone could respond, the hall's main communication system activated. A new voice spoke, clear and confident. Honorable delegates of the Galactic Council, this is Admiral Jae Hyun of the United Earth Colonial Defense Force. I request permission to address your assembly. The hall fell silent. Every delegate stared at the speakers as if they could see the human admiral through the sound alone. Taeho looked around the hall, then pressed his communication button. Admiral Jae Hyun, this is Ambassador Taeho. We would be honored to hear from you. Can you come to Nexus Prime? I am already here, Jae Hyun replied. Every being in the hall looked around in confusion. No new ships had been detected approaching the station. The defense sensors showed nothing unusual. I do not understand, Taeho said. Our sensors show no human vessels in this system. Check your docking bay 94, Jae Hyun suggested politely. Security teams rushed to docking bay 94. What they found there made them call for backup immediately. A ship unlike anything they had ever seen was docked at the station. It looked like it was made of flowing metal and captured starlight. Most disturbing of all, it had arrived without triggering a single alarm or sensor. 20 minutes later, Admiral Jae Hyun walked into the council hall. He was tall, but not unusually so. His hair was black with silver at the temples, and his face showed the lines of someone who had seen many years of difficult decisions. He wore a simple uniform of dark blue with silver markings. Most surprisingly of all, he looked completely normal. The delegates had expected something alien, something that matched the impossible technology they had witnessed. Instead, they saw someone who could have walked through any market in the galaxy without drawing attention. Honorable delegates, Jae Hyun began, his voice carrying easily through the hall. I come before you today to offer partnership between humanity and the Galactic Council. Partnership? Asked Nari. Admiral, your ships just destroyed an entire Vorthon fleet without taking any damage. What kind of partnership could we possibly offer to someone with your capabilities? Jae Hyun smiled, and the expression transformed his serious face. You offer us something we have been missing for thousands of years. You offer us the chance to be part of a community again. The delegates exchanged confused glances. This was not the conversation anyone had expected. I do not understand, Taeho said. If your people have been watching us for so long, why did you choose to reveal yourselves now? The Admiral's expression grew serious again. Because the galaxy is about to face threats that make the Vorthon Empire look like children playing with toys. Ancient enemies are stirring in the dark spaces between galaxies. Things that destroyed civilizations when the universe was young are waking up. We can face them alone, but our chances improve greatly if we face them together. A chill ran through the hall. Every species represented there had legends about the dark times, about civilizations that had vanished without explanation. You speak of the Deep Ones, whispered an ancient delegate named Morven. The Devourers. The stories say they were myth. The stories were wrong, Jae Hyun replied simply. They are very real and they are coming back. Our long-range sensors have detected their scout ships at the edge of the galaxy. We estimate we have perhaps 50 standard years before the first wave arrives. The hall erupted in panicked voices. 50 years sounded like a long time, but everyone knew how quickly time could pass when preparing for war. What do you propose? Taeho asked when the noise died down. Integration, Jae Hyun replied. Not conquest, not absorption, but true partnership. We share our technology. You share your knowledge of the galaxy. Together we prepare defenses that no single species could create alone. Delegate Velix raised one of her 6 arms. Admiral, your technology is clearly far beyond ours. What could we possibly offer that you need? Diversity, Jae Hyun answered immediately. Humanity has been isolated for millennia. We have developed incredible technology, but we have also become very good at thinking in only one way. The coming war will require creativity, adaptability, and solutions that no single mind could imagine. We need the different perspectives that each of your species brings. He paused and looked around the hall. More than that, we need allies we can trust. The Deep Ones corrupt everything they touch. They turn friends into enemies and allies into weapons. But corruption requires something to work with. United, supporting each other, we are much harder to turn against ourselves. The questions came quickly after that. How many human ships existed? Where were their bases? What other technology did they possess? How long would integration take? Jae-hyun answered every question with patience and detail. Yes, humanity had thousands of ships. Their primary bases were hidden throughout the galaxy, not just near Earth. They had technology for faster-than-light communication, matter transportation, and energy manipulation that current galactic science said was impossible. Integration could begin immediately for any world that wanted to participate. But we will not force participation, he stressed. Every world, every species, every individual gets to choose. Those who want to remain independent may do so. Those who want to join our preparations are welcome. As the session continued, 3 observers watched from the intelligence section with growing amazement. Dongmin, Sujin, and Jinwoo had thought they understood the scope of human civilization. They had been wrong. Listen to him talk about their bases, Sujin whispered. Hidden throughout the galaxy. How many monitoring stations did we miss? All of them, Jinwoo replied. Every single one. They have been watching us so completely that they know things about our own worlds that we do not know ourselves. Dongmin was reading intelligence reports on his portable screen. Look at this. Human medical teams are already working on 17 different worlds. They did not wait for permission. They just started helping where help was needed. The reports were amazing. Human doctors with technology that could regrow entire organs in hours. Engineers who could repair damaged orbital platforms in days instead of months. Agricultural experts who could turn barren worlds into gardens. They are not acting like conquerors, Sujin observed. They are acting like people who genuinely want to help. Maybe that is exactly what they are, Jinwoo suggested. Back in the main hall, the formal session was ending. But informal discussions continued as delegates gathered in small groups, talking excitedly about the possibilities and the dangers that Admiral Jae-hyun had described. The Admiral himself was surrounded by representatives who wanted to know more about human science, human culture, and human intentions. He answered every question with the same patient detail he had shown during the formal session. But privately, he was thinking about reports from the deep space monitoring stations. The ancient enemy was moving faster than expected. 50 years might be an optimistic estimate. On his ship, communications officer Yoon-ji was coordinating with human bases across the galaxy. The Grand Armada was being prepared for full deployment. Captain Young-sik was having a normal day patrolling the Vegan trade routes when his universe changed forever. His merchant escort ship, Lucky Star, was protecting a convoy of cargo vessels when his sensor operator started making strange noises. Captain, Ensign Cuman called out, his voice high with confusion. I am reading massive energy signatures appearing throughout the system, but there is nothing on visual. Young-sik floated over to look at the sensor display. What he saw made no sense. The readings showed dozens of enormous objects materializing from empty space. Objects the size of small moons but completely invisible to optical scanners. Run full diagnostics, he ordered. This has to be equipment failure. Before Q-Min could respond, space began to shimmer around them. The shimmer spread outward in waves like heat distortion on a hot day. Then, as if someone had removed an invisible blanket, ships began appearing. Not just ships. Fleets, armadas, space stations, construction platforms. An entire civilization that had been hiding in plain sight. The largest vessel was beyond anything Young-sik could have imagined. It stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. Its hull covered with docking bays and weapon systems. Smaller ships swarmed around it like insects around a hive. By all the stars, Q-Min whispered. What are those things? Young-sik's communication system crackled to life. A calm human voice spoke. Merchant vessels, this is Commander Hai-Wan of the Earth Defense Platform Victory. We apologize for the surprise. We are revealing our presence as part of new diplomatic initiatives with the Galactic Council. You are in no danger. Young-sik found his voice after several attempts. Commander, this is Captain Young-sik of the Lucky Star. How long have you been there? About 47 years, Hai-Wan replied matter-of-factly. We have been monitoring the trade routes to ensure safe passage for civilian vessels. We took the liberty of eliminating several pirate groups that were planning attacks on your convoy. Pirates? Young-sik checked his sensors again. Sure enough, there were debris fields scattered throughout the system. Fresh debris. When did this happen? Approximately 6 hours ago. We removed the threat before your convoy entered sensor range. We have been protecting these routes for decades, but we stayed hidden to avoid diplomatic complications. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. On hundreds of worlds and dozens of star systems, human forces were revealing themselves. But they were not appearing as invaders or conquerors. They were revealing themselves as protectors who had been working in secret for generations. On the mining world of Kepler 186f, Foreman Chan Wu was dealing with equipment failures in the deep mines. When human engineers appeared offering help, they did not ask for payment or territory. They just wanted to make sure the miners were safe. On the agricultural planet of Gliese 667c, farmers were struggling with a crop disease that threatened to cause famine. Human biotechnicians arrived with treatments that not only cured the disease, but improved crop yields by 30%. On the war-torn world of Wolf 359b, where two species had been fighting over territorial disputes for decades, human peacekeepers appeared between the armies. They did not take sides. Instead, they offered mediation services and humanitarian aid to both sides. The pattern was the same everywhere. Humans appearing not as conquerors but as helpers, not demanding tribute or submission, but offering assistance and protection. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council was in permanent emergency session. Reports were flooding in from every corner of known space. The scope of human presence was staggering. "They have been everywhere," reported Intelligence Chief Dongmin to the assembled delegates. "Every major trade route, every strategic system, every world that has ever faced a serious threat. The humans have been there watching and protecting for longer than most of our civilizations have existed." Ambassador Tejo was studying reports from his home system. According to this, human medical ships have been treating plague outbreaks on Altair Prime for the past 60 years. Our own medical records show unusually low death rates during those outbreaks, but we credited it to improved sanitation. "Same story everywhere," added Nari, her crystal body reflecting the lights from dozens of data screens. Pirate attacks that mysteriously failed. Natural disasters with surprisingly low casualty rates. Equipment failures that somehow fixed themselves. The humans have been helping us all along and we never knew. The numbers were overwhelming. Human forces were revealing bases in over 300 star systems. Their fleet included tens of thousands of ships from small patrol craft to vessels that dwarfed the largest council dreadnoughts. Mobile space stations housed entire cities of human personnel, along with refugees and civilians from dozens of species. But the most shocking discovery was not the size of the human presence. It was the diversity. The crews of human ships included not just humans, but members of dozens of different species. Altarians, Centaurians, vegans, even some Vortons who had defected from the Empire over the years. All working together as equals. "They have been building a galactic alliance for centuries," observed Delegate Velix. "While we have been arguing about borders and trade disputes, they have been creating something unprecedented. A truly integrated multi-species civilization." Admiral Jaehyun's flagship, the Terra Prime, had taken position near Nexus Prime. The massive vessel served as a mobile diplomatic center, hosting delegations from across the galaxy. Inside its vast conference chambers, representatives from hundreds of worlds were learning about human history and capabilities. The story that emerged was both amazing and humbling. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel over 2,000 years ago. But instead of expanding aggressively like most species, they had chosen to explore and observe. They had watched the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations, learning from each one. When they encountered species in trouble, they helped quietly, working from the shadows to prevent disasters without taking credit. When they found species on the verge of breakthrough discoveries, they provided subtle guidance to help the breakthroughs happen naturally. "We learned early that open contact often causes more problems than it solves," explained Commander Haiwan to a gathering of council delegates. "Species that receive advanced technology before they are ready for it often destroy themselves. But species that develop naturally, with just a little help when they need it most, tend to thrive." She gestured to a holographic display showing human activities across the galaxy over the past millennium. "We have been gardeners, not rulers. We have tried to help the galaxy grow into something beautiful, rather than imposing our own vision on it." The revelation of the Grand Armada was changing everything. Trade routes that had been plagued by pirates for generations were suddenly safe. Worlds that had struggled with resource shortages found themselves with access to human industrial capacity. Species that had been isolated by distance or political barriers discovered they could communicate through human relay networks. But not everyone was happy about the changes. In the Outer Rim territories, several warlords who had built their power on exploiting weak worlds found their operations under attack by human forces. The attacks were precise and overwhelming. Within days, criminal organizations that had existed for decades were simply gone, their leaders captured and their victims freed. The hegemony of Zeta Reticuli, a collection of worlds that had built their economy on slave labor, issued a formal protest against human interference in their internal affairs. The human response was delivered by Admiral Jae-hyun himself during a broadcast that reached every inhabited system in the galaxy. To the governments and organizations that profit from suffering, he said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty, know this: the age of tolerating cruelty in the name of sovereignty is over. Every sentient being in this galaxy has the right to freedom, safety, and dignity. Those rights are not negotiable. The broadcast continued. We do not seek to rule the galaxy. We do not want tribute or territory. But we will not stand by while innocents suffer when we have the power to help them. Choose your path carefully. Those who choose peace and cooperation will find us the most loyal allies they have ever had. Those who choose oppression and cruelty will find us an implacable enemy. The message was clear. The galaxy had new rules backed by overwhelming force and absolute determination. Within weeks, the slave markets of Zeta Reticuli were empty. The warlords of the Outer Rim had either surrendered or been defeated. Criminal organizations across the galaxy were abandoning their operations rather than face human intervention. But the most significant changes were happening in legitimate governments. On Altair Prime, Ambassador Taeho received a formal invitation to visit Earth itself. The invitation was extended to representatives from every council world, along with many non-council species. We would like you to see our home world, the invitation read. Not as tourists, but as partners planning our shared future. The first diplomatic ships to reach Earth were stunned by what they found. The planet was beautiful beyond description, but it was not the primitive world everyone had expected. Orbital habitats surrounded the planet like a shell of metal and crystal. Space elevators stretched from the surface to massive orbital platforms. The entire system hummed with activity. 2 years had passed since the Grand Armada revealed itself to the galaxy. The changes were beyond what anyone had imagined possible. Supreme Admiral Seong-ho stood on the bridge of the Unity Station, watching the construction of the Great Ring through the massive viewports. The ring stretched across an entire star system, a defensive structure so large it could be seen from neighboring systems. It was not built by humans alone, but by the combined efforts of over 200 different species. Altarian engineers worked alongside human technicians to create shield generators that could protect entire worlds. Centaurian artists designed the ring's structure to be beautiful as well as functional, turning a weapon of war into a work of art that inspired hope. Vegan mathematicians calculated orbital mechanics that kept the massive structure stable, despite forces that should have torn it apart. Admiral, reported his aide. Lieutenant Dayun, the Kepler Defense Group reports ready status. All stations are fully operational. Seong-ho nodded. The Kepler system, where humanity had first revealed itself, had become a symbol of the new galactic alliance. The planet below was no longer just a human colony, but a multi-species world where beings from across the galaxy worked together. Any word from the deep space monitors? He asked. Dayun's expression grew serious. Long-range sensors continued to detect movement in the void. The ancient machines are definitely approaching, but they are still at least 15 years away from the galactic rim. 15 years. It sounded like a long time. But Seong-ho knew how quickly time passed when preparing for war. Every day, every hour was precious. The door to the bridge opened and Director Youngie entered, followed by a diverse group of beings. The Galactic Unity Project had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What had started as a simple cultural exchange program had become the foundation for a new kind of civilization. Admiral, Youngie said, I wanted you to meet our newest graduates from the Integration Academy. The group included young beings from dozens of species, humans and Altarians, Centaurians and vegans, even a few reformed Vorthons who had chosen cooperation over conquest. All of them wore the same uniform, but with modifications that accommodated their different biological needs. These officers will be serving on the first joint species exploration ships, Young-A continued. Their mission is to make contact with species beyond the current galactic community and invite them to join our alliance. One of the graduates, a young Altarian named Taijun, stepped forward. "Admiral, we are honored to serve." The galaxy our parents knew was divided by fear and mistrust. "The galaxy we will explore is united by hope and cooperation." Seung-ho smiled. "The honor is mine, Lieutenant Taejun. You and your teammates represent the best of what we have built together." As the new graduates left to take their positions on the exploration ships, Seung-ho turned back to the viewports. The construction of the Great Ring was nearly complete, but it was just one of dozens of similar projects across the galaxy. The Altair system now hosted a massive research complex where scientists from every known species worked together to understand the ancient enemy. The Centauri system had become the center of the new galactic communication network, allowing instant communication across thousands of light years. The Vegan system was the hub of the new economic alliance, where resources were shared according to need rather than political power. But the most important changes were not visible from space. They were happening in the hearts and minds of billions of beings across the galaxy. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council had transformed from a loose alliance of suspicious species into a true governing body. Ambassador Tejo, now serving as council president, regularly held meetings that included not just government representatives but ordinary citizens from across the galaxy. The old way of governing was about managing conflicts between species, he explained to a group of young diplomats. The new way is about coordinating cooperation between partners. The transformation had not been without challenges. Some worlds had resisted integration, preferring their independence to the benefits of alliance. Some species had found it difficult to trust others after centuries of isolation or conflict. But the benefits of cooperation were impossible to ignore. Worlds that had struggled with poverty now had access to resources from across the galaxy. Species that had been limited by their biology could now work in environments that had been impossible before. Thanks to technology shared by their partners, the Vorthon Empire, once the most feared force in the galaxy, had become one of the most dedicated partners in the Alliance. Former Admiral Zexmore, who had survived the Battle of Kepler 442b, now served as a senior advisor on defense planning. "We thought strength came from conquest," he told new recruits at the Integration Academy. "We learned that true strength comes from protecting others." The Academy itself had grown from a small program on Earth to a network of facilities across the galaxy. Beings from every world could come to learn about other species, study advanced technology, and train for roles in the new galactic civilization. Captain Da-un, now commanding the exploration vessel New Horizon, was leading her mixed-species crew toward the edge of the galaxy. Their mission was to make contact with isolated species and invite them to join the Alliance before the ancient enemy arrived. "Captain," reported her science officer, a Centaurian named Quan Ho, "we are receiving signals from an unknown civilization in the next system. They appear to be under attack." Dayan did not hesitate. "All hands to battle stations. Signal the fleet. We have people to save." The New Horizon and its escort ships dropped out of hyperspace to find a desperate battle. A species of crystalline beings was fighting a losing battle against mechanical invaders. Their ships were beautiful, but clearly outmatched by their enemy's superior technology. "This is Captain Da-un of the Galactic Alliance vessel New Horizon," she broadcast on all frequencies. "Unknown vessels, you are ordered to cease hostilities immediately." The mechanical ships ignored the warning and continued their attack on the crystalline being's homeworld. "All ships, engage the invaders," Da-un ordered. "Protect the civilians." The battle was brief. Human weapons and shields combined with Altarian tactics and Centaurian coordination made quick work of the mechanical invaders. Within an hour, the threat was eliminated. The crystalline beings, who called themselves the Resonance, were grateful but confused. They had never encountered species who would risk their lives to protect complete strangers. "Why did you help us?" asked their leader, a being whose body rang like a bell when she spoke. "Because that is what allies do," Da-un replied simply. "We protect each other." The Resonance became the latest species to join the Alliance, bringing their unique abilities in energy manipulation and their beautiful crystal technology. Their ships would soon be patrolling alongside human vessels, protecting other worlds from threats. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. The Alliance was growing stronger every day, not through conquest but through compassion. But time was running out. The deep space monitors were sending increasingly urgent reports. The ancient enemy was moving faster than expected, and their numbers were beyond anything the galaxy had faced before. On Earth, in the deepest levels of the Planetary Defense Center, Admiral Jae-hyun was meeting with the galaxy's best strategic minds. The holographic display showed the approaching threat in all its terrifying detail. Thousands of machine vessels, each one the size of a moon. Weapons that could destroy entire star systems. Technology that was older than most galactic civilizations, but still more advanced than anything the Alliance possessed. They call themselves the Harvesters, reported Chief Intelligence Officer Min-soo. According to the ancient records we have recovered, they sweep through galaxies every few million years, consuming all biological life and adding the technological achievements to their own capabilities. How long before they reach us? Asked Jae-hyun. 8 years, possibly less. The room fell silent. 8 years to prepare for a war that would determine whether biological life would continue to exist in their galaxy. What are our chances? Asked Admiral Sung-ho. Jae-hyun studied the tactical projections. Alone, any single species would have no chance at all. The old Galactic Council, even if it had been fully united, would have been destroyed in the first battle. He paused and looked around the room at the faces of beings from dozens of different worlds. But we are not any single species, and we are not the old council. We are something new, something the Harvesters have never encountered before. We are a truly integrated galactic civilization, where the strengths of every species combine to create something greater than the sum of its parts. The preparations began immediately. Every shipyard in the galaxy switched to producing warships designed with the combined knowledge of all Alliance species. Every world began training its people for the war to come. Every research facility focused on finding weaknesses in Harvester technology. But the most important preparations were not military. They were social and spiritual. Director Young-ae launched the Legacy Project, designed to preserve the culture and knowledge of every species in case the worst happened. But it was more than just preservation. It was celebration.